teachers can actually tailor the exam to the strengths of that student. And what I mean by that is that between initial grade, which is pre-grade 1, right up to grade 5, we have 4 supporting tests. Okay, that's what we call oral skills, sight reading, improvisation, and musical knowledge.
Welcome to the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast, the place where teachers from around the world meet to share innovative ideas about music education. Listen and learn as we help you motivate your students, grow your income, expand your studio, and become a more creative piano teacher.
Welcome to episode 82 of the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast, and thanks again so much for listening. It is great to have you wherever you are in the world and whatever you're up to. I really appreciate that you're listening into today's podcast. My name is Tim Topham, and I'm the teacher behind the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast, the teaching blog at timtopham.com, and the InnerCircle Piano Teaching Community. My passion is supporting creative piano teaching, whether that's through podcasts like this, or the hundreds of articles on my blog, or training courses, downloads, and lesson plans in the InnerCircle community. That's what all of this is about, and I know that we're going to have a great session with you today. For the full show notes and a transcript of today's episode, you can head to timtopham.com/episode 82. So today we're starting off this month's theme of exploring exams and recitals by looking at one of the many exam boards available for music teachers. And the exam we're looking at today is Trinity College London. So we're going to find out how their exams work, some of the differences between Trinity and the other exam boards, and how you can get started if you would like to try them out. This actually forms part of a series of podcasts I've done, which began way back at episode 16 when I interviewed the head of ANZCA, ANZCA Australia. If you're interested in some of the other recordings we've done about other exam boards, episode 17 was about the ABRSM, number 31 was about the Royal Conservatory in Canada, episode 36 was about the AMEB, and now this one, number 82, all about Trinity College London. My guest today has enjoyed a multifaceted career as a music educator, lecturer, arts journalist, music critic, pianist, vocal coach, conductor, adjudicator, and administrator. He has worked for Trinity College London since 1990 and was awarded honorary membership to the college by the college's patron, His Royal Highness the Duke of Kent, at a ceremony in London's Wigmore Hall in 1995 in recognition for his contribution to music education and Trinity's work in Australia. He was appointed state manager in 1998 and then national manager in 2000. As well as his Trinity role, he also heads up the music department at the King's School, Sydney, one of Australia's top private boys' schools. Barry Walmsley, welcome to the show today.
Thank you very much, Tim. Great to be.
I do not know how you do all of those things. Having worked in a school context, in a big school, in a music department, that is way enough to keep me busy. How do you manage to fit in both those roles and all the other stuff you do?
Well, I don't sleep. I'm a chronic insomniac and I've got no hair. So, that's my life. Yeah, I just love it. I'm passionate about it. And I am a workaholic, really.
All right. Well, look, your name pops up all the time when it comes to music education, particularly in Australia. So it is so great to be able to talk with you about something else that's very passionate, obviously for you, which is these Trinity College London exams. So can you tell us just quickly, how did you become involved in these Trinity exams?
Okay, well, I learned at Trinity, I suppose, in my early 20s when I was at the Sydney Conservatorium training as a piano performer, and I did a couple of diplomas at that stage, and it just sort of snowballed from there. I showed great interest and, I just took it on, and over time, Trinity has found a spot for me, and, I really love the syllabuses and the examiners who visit. I love supporting teachers. I love showing alternatives to possibly, the mainstream sort of exam that might be offered here in Australia. It's just sort of snowballed.
Fantastic. Did you, as a child, do exams with other boards?
I did. I grew up in a small country town, so there was only one provider, the major exam body in Australia, the AMEB.
Yep.
I'm very proud to have gone through that system, and I know, its strengths, of course. And it's only in, young adult life that I actually, took on Trinity and then found, this is a great system and I really want to do more with it. That's my experience.
I think a lot of teachers, until more recently, haven't actually been aware that there are quite a few choices for exam bodies both around the world and certainly in Australia. I think there's at least 5 or 6 in Australia alone. And so I think one of the main things that I'd like to get across in these discussions for teachers is the fact that there is a huge opportunity to tailor an exam to suit the student and to suit the goals of the student. You don't always have to do the same thing. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the strengths of Trinity, because it is a hugely flexible system. Yes, there are a huge variety of offerings, from other exam boards as well. Let me say about Trinity, one of the lovely things that our grade music teachers enjoy is that we have built into the syllabus options. So teachers can actually tailor the exam to the strengths of that student. And what I mean by that is that between initial grade, which is pre-grade 1, right up to grade 5, we have 4 supporting tests. Okay, that's what we call oral skills, sight reading, improvisation and musical knowledge. And it's between those grades that teachers can then select 2 of those to be examined. So obviously, if a student is good at musical knowledge and let's say oral, they tick those boxes and that's what they'll go into the exam to be examined on. So flexibility and that's really quite an innovative thing that I think Trinity can be proud of. Having said that, when I do teacher meetings, I always say to teachers, don't just teach those 2 elements,
Yes.
Do the sight reading, which everybody, tends to dislike. Strangely enough, when I was a kid, I was very good at sight reading and I loved it and got high marks and so on. So I was one of those nerds.
That's just weird, Barry.
In another conversation. But, so do the sight reading, do all those other things, even teach improvisation, even if it's not being part of the exam. I have to say that at grade 6, those supporting tests get slimmed down and sight reading becomes mandatory. So, if a student is going to go on to more advanced levels, sight reading is really important. But in the early levels, Trinity is hugely innovative. I can talk about other kinds of choices and options that they have. But I think Trinity stands out because of that as well.
Flexibility. I like it. Before we go into a little bit more depth about the actual exams, can you tell us a little bit about Trinity College? Like, where did these exams actually come out of? I'm assuming, obviously, London. How did they emerge?
Sure. Well, it was in the 1870s. A fellow by the name of the Reverend George Vanavia Hunt decided he would start an institution. So he started Trinity College of Music, London, and it was based in London, of course, where it still is. And a few years after starting that, with some very initial sort of courses, he decided on an exam system. So this Trinity exams are the very first of their kind in the world. So they're the oldest exam body in the performing arts. So that was so they were rolled out in music and then speech and drama, and of course the college has diversified over the decades since. So that was the 1870s. The 2 earliest overseas centres for the college were in India and, strangely enough, in Tasmania in Australia. But now we operate in 60 countries, so it's a worldwide business. It has 2 parts. So there's the administrative part, which is the exams body, Trinity College London, and then you've got the conservatory part, which is Trinity College of Music London. It goes by a couple of names, and that's based at Greenwich in London.
Yeah, so students can actually go to study at Trinity College as they could the Royal College of Music, right?
Sure.
And so this is a part of that same group.
Yeah, so it's one of a handful of music conservatoires in London, teaching undergraduate and graduate courses. Just like Sydney Conservatorium, Victorian College of the Arts and so on.
So it would be like Sydney Conservatorium running an exam system. That's kind of how it started.
It is, although now, in the last 20 or so years, the exams part of the college has separated as a separate company as such. It's a registered charity. So it is a little bit separated from the actual day-to-day teaching conservatoire part.
Got it. What would you say are the main goals of these exams?
Well, I suppose it is to provide an assessment system in the performing arts, music. There's other parts like speech and drama and so on. But I suppose the goal for Trinity examiners is to provide a great amount of feedback and a good experience to help motivate students, also to give perhaps some feedback to teachers, some guidance. It's all of those kinds of things, and I think the important thing about the college's work in terms of exams is to say to teachers and to schools and parents, this is one part of the musical journey. This is not the end point. There are many ways to arrive at being, a competent musician or a performer, and the exam systems are just one part of it.
I'll be writing and releasing a post later this month I've been working on for some time, Barry, which is going to be a letter to parents, an open letter, about this approach to exams and where they fit in to the scheme of music education. Because while I think times are changing, there is still that unfortunate situation where teachers simply run to an exam system, which of course means that by the time students finish the exam system, 1, they're drained, 2, they haven't had a very broad experience, 3, they think they've finished. It's like, I've done grade 8, I'll stop playing now. That's done, right?
Yes. And indeed, they stop even earlier than that. I mean, generally, most exam boards will say that fall-off happens after about grade 5. I mean, I try to stress this point that the exam is just part of that whole musical journey. Trinity is not a policing mechanism. It's not a Bible for teachers to use as their only teaching model. So I'm always advocating, go out and find other repertoire, supplement what you're teaching, do improvisation, do composition, give the student a really well-rounded experience. And then throw into the mix an exam, because that does tend to heighten some skills towards a particular month of the year or whatever. So, teachers should use the exam system for the greater benefit of the student.
What type of piano exams now, let's look specifically at, often? And let's talk about some of those other features that are a little bit different for Trinity Piano versus other exam boards.
Okay. So we offer 9 grades. So that's initial grade and then grades 1 to 8. You don't have to do every grade sequentially. You can jump ahead if that's needed. In those exams, there are required to play 3 pieces. There's technical work and scales. Technical work means some little studies that have been devised for each grade. There's the supporting tests of, as I said, oral skills, sight reading, improvisation, musical knowledge, up to grade 5. And then from grade 6 to 8, it is a choice of sight reading, oral tests, and improvisation. So the musical knowledge part gets dispensed with at grades 6, 7, and 8. In between those grades, we also have what we call certificate exams. So they are at the elementary level, which is about grade 3, intermediate, which is grade 5, and then advanced, which is grade 8 or post-grade 8, in between grade 8 and the diplomas. So those exams are really good because it strips away all of those supporting tests and technical work, and it is performance-based. Students have to write little program notes and devise their program and treat it as a mini recital. So there's 3 different types of exams that come between the grades. And then after grade 8 and after the advanced certificate, there are 3 types of diploma in performance. So the associate diploma, ATCL, licentiate diploma, which is LTCL, and the fellowship diploma, the FTCL. So they're very advanced, internationally recognised awards.
You certainly see musicians with those letters after their names, so now I know what they mean. That's very helpful. I know some of the other exam boards offer jazz exams or piano accompaniment exams and duet exams. Do you do that kind of stuff?
We do piano accompaniment. We do piano duet, and we do have an ensemble exam syllabus which allows pianists to be doing, 2 pianos or 6 hands or even combining with other instrumentalists. So they could be doing a piano trio. So there's all that kind of chamber music that can be thrown in there as well in our ensemble exams. We don't have a jazz syllabus yet for piano, but we do have that in woodwind. The other thing that might interest people in terms of keyboard playing is our rock and pop keyboard exams. So that's the contemporary line of exams, and that's considerably different. It's offered once a year in Australia. That's October and November. Hugely popular and great resources to go with them as well.
Yeah, that was a recent, last probably 5 years, would I be right in thinking, the rock and pop Trinity exams?
Yes, that's right.
Have you? I'm interested to know of the growth of them, because I know that from my audience, there's a lot of interest in pop music in our students, and I encourage teachers to help students with pop alongside everything else in a rounded curricula. How have you seen the growth in the pop exams?
Okay, it is an unusual phenomenon because many teachers don't feel skilled or really wish to take on pop and rock music as an examinable entity. So changing the mindset in terms of saying, look, give your students a benchmark, get them some sort of assessment in that field. So you would know that many people who want to play contemporary music jam away, they improvise and so on. And all of that is kind of taken into account in terms of how these exams are devised. How? Because we, instead of supporting tests like, let's say, sight reading and oral tests, we have what we call session skills. So that's what we call playback and improvisation. So we sort of identify the things that popular musicians need in the real world. As well as that, one of the great things about the rock and pop is that they're using real music. They're not using contrived, specially composed pieces, that have a kind of pop or rock feel. They are real music. The college has sourced all the copyright, which is an extraordinary challenge.
Huge challenge, yeah.
Together. They have accompanied CDs. So, a person playing keyboards will have a backing that sort of emulates, a band. So that's really good. In terms of growth, it is slow, but the reason for that, as I said, is just a mindset in terms of teaching. We find that our books are selling hugely. They are becoming great resources in schools because of the content, the repertoire that's been selected there. But that'll take off, and hopefully that'll be really exciting for Australian teachers.
Absolutely, and the more I do my job, the more you might see an increase in enrolments. I must say that it doesn't surprise me that the books are proving popular, given that we know that often current pop resources for teachers can be actually quite difficult to find, or the arrangements are shocking. Or they're badly written, or they're just bad choices. So certainly for teachers who are interested in this, jumping on your website, and we'll give you the details at the end, to find out the music that's in those books could be really useful for your studio, even if you're not considering an exam right now for a student. Absolutely.
Use the books, they're great resources.
And the certificate exams, I really like the idea of these, and I know a number of the other exam boards offer the same thing. What kind of student do you think they suit the best?
Well, I think everybody has, the opportunity, should use these opportunities. Why I say that is because we find today some parents and some teachers driven to, getting their students through the next grade in a very early amount of time. I actually advise, if you've got that parent who's really, really pushing hard to go on to the next level, and you as the teacher thinks this student needs a little bit more time, a little bit more consolidation, use the certificate exam. That'll help them broaden out their repertoire. You can prepare the next exam. You can prepare those technical issues that you've been working on. It still gives them that little benchmark, that little piece of paper. It might satisfy the parent, the person who's really driving hard to achieve all those goals. So I use it to consolidate repertoire or broaden repertoire, I should say, and to give them more of a real performance experience. All right, rather than just going in and having the exam examiner asks for the various things, they go in and they treat it as a mini recital, which I think is really great.
Yeah, it's a great experience. Absolutely. And I like that they create program notes. I think, that's what you would have to do if you were going to perform a recital. So, yeah, good. You mentioned that students can be examined in 60 countries or something. Does Trinity College have options in most of the main places in the world where people would be listening to this? Canada, New Zealand, US, Australia? I know we've got people in India, Europe.
Yeah, so that's right. So you've mentioned some major markets there. Yes, Canada, United States, New Zealand, Australia, of course, South Africa, big centres through Southeast Asia, and also in Europe. So, even Italy, a lot of European countries, Spain, the Latin American countries. So there we are. Yeah, 60 countries.
It's huge. And how many exam sessions are generally offered each year, or is that heavily location dependent?
Well, it's about location. It's about the volume of candidates as well. So, it varies from place to place. If I were to say about Australia, we offer up to 4 practical sessions a year. So not all centres will offer those because, they might just have enough students for 1 session a year for the examiner to visit. So it's based on candidature, it's based on location. There are some parts of the world where exams are almost 24/7, in places in India and throughout Southeast Asia, very big markets. So yes, it varies. Okay.
Let's talk about your examiners. One of the hardest things, I think, for any exam board is to ensure standardization so that teachers can be sure that regardless of which examiner examines their student, they should get the same result. How does Trinity ensure that standardization and train their examiners?
Good question. Trinity has a compulsory residential examiners conference every year. So no matter where the examiners come from in the world, they must attend if they want to continue examining for that year. I was lucky enough to be a guest and an observer some years ago at one of these conferences, and I could see firsthand that the examiners were put through their paces. And it was really quite interesting to see examiners with a little bit of stress and anxiety because they were actually being examined. So they go through a process where they have to sit together. There might be 8 in a room and they're examining one particular candidate. And at the end of that, all the results are collated and churn through, and the statistics are pushed out to see, who's on the mark according to what the chief examiner and the criteria, require. So that's one part of the process. The examiners conference is also to look at new syllabuses that are coming online or changes to the syllabus and so on. So it is rigorous. If examiners can't get their marks within a 2 to 3% deviation, they don't go out on the road. They are put through additional training, and until they actually can learn and understand the criteria that's required for those exams.
Wow, that's big. Does that move around the world, that conference?
Oh, sorry, no. It's essentially in the UK. They have set up. Because examiners now are located in many parts of the world, they don't just come from the UK. There is a conference, I think, that's in Southeast Asia. So, they are looking at diversifying where they hold those conferences as well.
Right, because I know that ABRSM, for example, sends examiners to the different countries, I think. Is that right? Or you might not know.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, so it's quite different there. So Trinity's training up examiners in their local areas to oversee the exams.
Well, yeah, principally in Southeast Asia. Most of the examiner training is done in the UK.
Right. And in Australia, examiners Australian?
No, we do have examiners who live here, but the examiners that we have visit this country will come from elsewhere.
Right.
One of the reasons is we don't want localised influences bearing upon their mind, I suppose. Which is quite a nice thing. It's a completely objective, very straightforward process. Examiners come in, they get to meet the representative, They will meet teachers after the exam at a teachers' meeting if that's organised. But they have no idea about the local dynamics amongst teachers or schools or whatever. So they're coming with a blank slate and assessing according to the criteria.
That's great. And what's the marking scheme look like, Barry?
So we have, marks out of 100. So, they get component marks for each part of the exam. Broadly speaking, the technical work and scales in grade exams come to 14%. There are 3 pieces, each worth 22%. And then there are the other sections which make up the remainder of the exam. Pass is 60 to 74, merit is 75 to 86, and the distinction is 87 upwards. Our diplomas pass at 60%, distinction at 80%.
So it is numerical in that teachers can see where the marks have been lost?
Absolutely. That's a really great thing for teachers to see. I think it's also useful for teachers to be able to show that report to the parents of the students that they might teach, and that can help to reinforce what the teacher has been saying. That's the whole point of it. So if little Johnny hasn't done enough work on the technical work and has done poorly there, but has excelled on the pieces, the numeric values will actually reinforce that. It's great having that objective outsider view of the student's progress.
And one of the things I liked in regard to technical work when I put a student through this was that you do fewer scales and arpeggios, but you have technical exercises. Can you tell us quickly about those?
That's right. So those technical exercises are designed to capture some particular skill. It might deal with pedalling, it might deal with legato touch, it might, so a whole range of things scattered throughout the grade system. And that's an attempt to show how technique, albeit in, a short number of bars, can be found in real music, I suppose. I mean, the 3 pieces, obviously, is all about technique and artistry as well. But these just support the playing of scales and arpeggios and so on.
Yeah, it's great. It makes it relevant.
Yeah, the scales and arpeggios are absolutely necessary, but, they're a bit dry, aren't they? You like to play little tunes, to help with that.
Yeah, and while teachers can teach certain skills through scales, things like 2-note slurs or different touches between the hands and things like that, unless you're playing scales in all different kinds of ways, they become harder. So that's why I did like these technical exercises, in that they actually challenge students at the correct level to be able to do things that they should be able to do, correct movements of the arms and flow and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What about theory? Do you have theory requirements?
So there are 8 theory exams, grades 1 to 8, before we get into diploma theory. We encourage students to do our theory. We don't make it a prerequisite, so it's not mandatory. But of course, the theory syllabus, I think, is fantastic. We examine that twice a year, so in May and November, and they're set theory dates that occur all over the world. So apart from different time zones, people are sitting those exams at the same time or on the same day, let's say.
Right. And do you sell grade books of music? And if so, how long do they last?
Okay. So the life of a grade book, yes, we do sell the grade books. We do publish grade books for most instruments, as well as books that deal with scales and technical work, and sight reading books and ear test books. So they're all published by Trinity College London Press, a new entity that's emerged in the last year or so. So we do sell those books. They're great for teachers to have, even if you're not doing the exams. They're great resources. The life of the book will depend on the syllabus. So in terms of piano, we run much shorter lifespans for piano because it is so popular. So they run for 2 years. We always give a 12-month overlap, so you can basically say from the start of the syllabus it's got 3 years. Other instruments, say woodwind and so on, have a 4-year time span usually.
And in each book you include the technical exercises, the scales required, all of that stuff?
Yes, that's right.
Great.
Yeah.
How long does so each syllabus lasts about 2 years, and you change it up in piano, but you've got that 1 year overlap. Yeah. Okay.
Correct.
For your diploma exams, do you do teaching diplomas as well?
Yes. So there are, the diplomas in instrumental and vocal teaching. If I talk just about the associate diploma, which is the entry-level diploma, it is the most popular. It's an interesting diploma because it has a couple of parts. One is called submitted materials, and that's where the candidate is required to reflect on their teaching practice, reflect on their learning experience before becoming a teacher, to do some observation lessons and log those. In the practical applications, that's where they will appear before a visiting examiner. They'll be asked to demonstrate repertoire. They'll be asked to demonstrate certain skills for their instrument. They'll also have to do a presentation, so they're able to do a 10-minute presentation on a particular aspect for their instrument. So, for instance, it might be on pedaling for the piano. It could be on sight reading or some other skill. And then the examiner will have a viva voce with the candidate, so that'll be based on everything that's evolved in that particular time, as well as the submitted material. So they can select all sorts of things from what's been provided. Right.
It's a big process, like most of the exam boards, it sounds like.
Yeah. A lot of teachers to do it because, it's one thing, most teachers go through a performance stream, as a child. They'll do their associate diploma in performance, and then they'll go out and teach. But when you actually do a teaching diploma, it really hones your thinking, about pedagogy. And it's so different to just doing a recital type diploma. So I'd encourage teachers to look at that. Yes, there is a bit of paperwork, but there's they can do it in their own time. They should match up with some sort of mentor teacher, and they won't find the process as onerous as it might look in the syllabus. But it's well worth doing,
and it's all practical too, which is important. Do you have online enrolment results or syllabuses?
The syllabuses are all online, downloadable. Free for the world. So, yes, that's there. We don't actually enter students online as yet. They are piloting this as a process in selected centres in the UK. But as you can appreciate, working in 60 countries, to develop a system like that, it's not going to be localised. It's going to, all feed back to the head office. So they've got to get it right. We've got to get it right for all the various countries and so on. So that's going to take a little bit of time, but the syllabuses are certainly all free and downloadable.
Great. And do you know how, while this will change depending on location, how quickly are results generally delivered?
Okay. So usually it's at the end of the session, but in large centres, which might have sessions that go for weeks and weeks and even months, they'll be delivered to the local representative pretty much at the end of each week, and for that person then to distribute them to the teachers and schools. So pretty much you get your grade results in a week. Diplomas are slightly different because those reports go back to our London office with a recording of the exam, and an associate chief examiner or delegate will listen to that exam, reading the report of the visiting examiner, and then countersign it, or make amendments if they perhaps disagree. So that process, the diploma reports may take up to 6 weeks, but the grade reports are out, pretty much within a week to 10 days.
Great. One of the hardest things for teachers considering a change of exam board, particularly if they've grown up with one, is feeling so comfortable that they know a system and then suddenly having to change. And sometimes these changes can be considerate. Do you have any advice for teachers considering a change of system? Some of the pros and cons and that sort of thing.
Sure. My strongest bit of advice would be to any teacher to read the syllabus very carefully. Read it from cover to cover. I find what a lot of teachers will do is just look at the selection, the repertoire selection, but then not read about the supporting tests and how they are different from whatever they might have used previously. So my advice is to read the syllabus. Secondly, they can contact a local area representative. They can also contact me via email to the national office. And thirdly, when we do actually run teacher meetings in their local area, do come along, meet the examiner, or meet myself or whoever might be conducting that talk. Ask the questions there. There's plenty of ways to find out, but essentially read the syllabus, get the resource material. So, teachers should invest in a small library of resource material. I mean, if I looked at my sight reading books, they're from every known exam board, every publisher. So I just don't buy what the exam is that I'm doing. I will develop a library. So I think all of those things help in this process.
And I think I learned the most about it by just putting one student in for the exam. And I think, in fact, the student I registered was from overseas and had already done some Trinity exams, so he knew the system. I know it's a bit scary and it took some of getting my head around, but I just committed to trying it out with one student, and that's obviously a great way to do it if you can. You're smiling. Why are you smiling at me?
Well, no. Why don't you put in 10 students? Put in your strong students and your weak students. See what it throws up.
Just dipping my toe in the water, Barry. So let's just quickly summarise. For the majority of the piano exams, it's students are preparing 3 pieces. Up to grade 5, they have the option of 2 of sight reading, oral, general knowledge, and improvising. And then from 6 plus, they have to do sight reading, and then they can choose to do oral or improv along with that. So just a couple more questions on that. For the improv, do you help teachers know what's to do with that?
Okay, so the syllabus does specify quite clearly the parameters and the guidance that's needed. There are 3 types of stimuli that might be offered: harmonic, rhythmic, and melodic. And the student will choose one of those. But the syllabus will outline, what's required in terms of how many bars, what sort of style, what the examiner is looking for. There are also some books available to help with that and some sample downloadable material from the Trinity UK site.
And with regard to the 3 pieces, I'm going to bring this up because I know people will be thinking about it. Isn't it bad for an exam board to only require 3 pieces of a student in their exam?
Well, what would you want? 6, 10, 12? I don't know. Look, the exam, as I said...
it's very tongue-in-cheek, Barry, obviously, because I know that there will be teachers out there who see that as a great out for teaching not very much.
Well, if I could kindly put it, I think the teacher who simply teaches 3 pieces for 6 months or even 12 months, I think is defrauding the student. I know students and families are very busy these days, but really, teach as much repertoire as you can. In fact, when I get one of the piano books, I will teach all 9 pieces or whatever's contained in the book, and then we'll choose from that. So, they get value out of the investment in the book, but they more importantly get a huge range of repertoire. And then, if depending on the time that you've got with the student in terms of length of lesson, teach them film music or pop music or some other Haydn or Beethoven or whatever else. So as I would like to just go back to a previous comment, the exam system in my mind and that of Trinity is that it's not a policing system. It's not a pedagogical, Bible, I suppose. Teachers should expand beyond that. But what the 3 pieces is all about is that's what's going to be examined in the exam room on that day.
Look, I think it's great because it actually gives teachers more opportunity to do more other stuff. If you're preparing students with 6 pieces, you have far less ability to go out and do a whole lot of different things. So I actually think as long as teachers, as you say, look at it and come at it from the right perspective, it makes sense.
That's right. I think it doesn't lock them in to a rigid format. Can I just say one other thing about the 3 pieces, which might interest some teachers, is that we have a composition option as well. So instead of the 3rd piece, students can choose to compose their own piece and perform it. So that's not widely known, partly because I think the majority of piano teachers don't feel that they're skilled in terms of teaching composition, but there are parameters within the and guidance notes within the syllabus about how to do this. But, in our education systems, I think this goes right across the world. Schools are requiring students to not only listen, perform, but also to compose. So this exam system enables them to do that and, make it work for them in the exam situation as well.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think it's great for teachers to know. All right, so look, we'll start wrapping it up. What are the other resources, websites? Do you have any apps that Trinity provides for teachers?
Right, okay. So let me just tell you that there are, for Australian teachers, they should log on to the Australian website, which is trinitycollege.com.au. Elsewhere in the world, trinitycollege.com, that'll take them to the UK site and they can work out from there. There is a dedicated rock and pop website, which is trinityrock.com. You can access that navigate that through the other sites as well. And in Australia, there is an online store, which is trinitypublications.com.au. In addition, there is a blog that comes out of the UK website, but just log on to the UK website, trinitycollege.com, put in the search cell blog, and that'll take you to things, frequently asked questions. It'll talk about the preparation of program notes. It'll also introduce examiners. It's a whole array of things.
Great. And if teachers want to read about my experience of the student that I put through your exam system a few years ago, you can just search for Trinity on my blog page. At the top right, there's a search button. So you're welcome to have a read through that. Okay, last question. Apart from the information nights for teachers, do you do other PD?
So yes, we try to roll out, when we've got new syllabuses, we try to ensure that teachers have the opportunity to look at that in certain centres. It can't happen in every centre, but we try to access as many teachers as we can. We're looking at, helping teachers develop skills in such areas as teaching sight reading and improvisation and rock and pop. So all of those things, it just takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, getting the right people involved. But we are very committed to professional development of teachers and supporting them.
That's great. Well, look, Barry, I think we'll wrap it up there. Is there anything that I've missed that we really need to cover before we wrap things up?
I think you've been fairly comprehensive. But look, just to say, finally, in Australia, if teachers wanted to contact me, they're able to do that through the Australian website, trinitycollege.com.au. I'm very happy to answer or put them in touch with the right people and hopefully, help them through on this journey.
And Barry is also on Facebook too. I've seen you pop in and out of various discussions and groups. Am I right in that?
Sure, yes. I should have said, thank you for reminding me. Trinity does have a Facebook and a Twitter feed as well.
It's hard to keep up with it all. I struggle myself sometimes. So for teachers, wherever you are in the world, if you'd like to find out more, head to trinitycollege.com and I think you'll get redirected, or you'll certainly land on the UK site and be able to find out more information from there. Barry, thank you very much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you.
Thanks, Tim. Good to speak to you.
See you later.
Ladies and gentlemen,
that will conclude this evening's entertainment.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast. We'd love to help take your teaching to the next level as a member of our supportive community. Use the coupon Piano Podcast for $100 off an annual membership of Tim's InnerCircle today. To find out more, head to timtopham.com/community.